Call to order the City Council work session for Tuesday, March 26, 2024. Would the City Clerk please call roll?
Mayor Buchanan.
Here.
Council President Mark Olstad.
Here.
Council Vice President Tim Riepel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Vedder.
Here.
Ben Huckstavinsky.
Here.
Dale Helms. Brian Larson.
Here.
Karen Peterson. Here.
Does term quorum. Before we move on to number one, Renee, if you want to say a few words, give us an update on what you have going on.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Olstad and Mayor and council members. I'm really excited to announce that last week I discovered that we received a $25,000 grant from the Laura Jane Musser Fund, which strives to bring together rural communities, so it's the rural initiative, and find ways for diverse community members to work together. So back in October, I applied for the grant, collaborated with the city, with the East Grand Forks School District, the Campbell Library, the Northlands Community and Technical Colleges, some area churches, and other community members, and sent the grant off. Didn't hear anything, so we didn't think we got it, and you could have knocked me over with a feather when we got the $25,000 check last week. So really exciting news. I wanted to share it really briefly with you. I kind of barged into your meeting and said, can I please let you all know about this? I'm hoping that I can get together with city members and see how we might be able to use some of this money to make things happen in East Grand Forks. So that's all I have.
Appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Thanks for all the hard work you've put into that, and we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to number one, 2024 Economic Development Strategic Plan Update. Mr. Gorte and Mr.
Thank
Schill.
you. And Mark Schill is here as well. What you have before you is a final draft of the updated priorities and work plan for the Economic Development Authority. It's based upon conversations with the City Council, with the Economic Development Authority, and with the business community. There are really two primary purposes here. One is to provide direction for the Economic Development Authority to make sure that it's in alignment with the City Council and the business community as well, and also to be flexible to adjust to changing conditions as we move forward. At this point, if I could, I'll just turn it over to Mark. Well, I'll say one more thing before we do that. One of the things we learned as we were listening to all the groups is that there are things that are EDA focused and there are things that are city focused where the EDA plays a supporting role. So this document was prepared in a way that identifies the tasks that will be primary focus for EDA, and will also contain tasks and activities where the EDA will be supporting citywide activities but not be the primary player in those areas. So Mark, please.
Sure. So as Mr. Gorte asked me to just walk through this document, and what you'll see here is shouldn't be too surprising. It's a sort of a summation of some of the materials we brought to this body in the past, with the goal of putting a piece together that is brief enough to be useful, but has enough detail to not leave anything out. And so we tried to walk that line. And as he said, one of the chief changes here is making that delineation between what the EDA should be focusing on and defining that, and what is still important, but is maybe more of a broader city responsibility. And part of that is an aim towards prioritization and clarifying, particularly as the staff shifts at the EDA, to have a real clear structure around what the work should be for the EDA. And it's not to say that there aren't other roles, right, and that the EDA director isn't working on some of these other things, but that's part of the goals here. So that first section, just after the mission statement, outlines these key priorities. These are all things that we heard very loudly from the groups that participated in the process, focusing on existing businesses, focusing on the commercial space and land, more of that in the community, an increase in marketing and communications, a focus on that, and then continuing to better leverage the business community and creating explicit mechanisms to have a voice at the table for people in the community as part of the general work of the EDA. The last two there are maybe more specific to the situation at hand. Number 5 refers to the housing in the community and recognizing that that's still a key priority, but that the consensus was that the EDA and the city, by definition, should discontinue ownership of the residential lots, and just continue to sell those at the current pace until those are exhausted, and that should take anywhere from 3 to 5 years, roughly, at the current pace. And then the last one was to focus. All of this does inform, who the staff should be moving forward, and to focus on skill sets of communication, coalition building, and sales, as opposed to, say, technical land planning, right, or land development, as it may have been, and that's part of Paul's background, right? And so the second part of this, and maybe the substantive part, is these core work areas, is trying to create a structure around what the work is for the EDA. And it's those 4 categories: the local business development, the new business development, the connect, convene, and communicate, and then the land and site development. So the remainder of the piece outlines some specifics around each of those. Each one has a number of bullets that just describe the general role and what that work is. And then, as we said, some outlined actions or initiatives or strategies specific to the EDA, but then also specific to the community where the EDA supports. And so under the local business, obviously that focuses on existing companies. The first action there is continue to work on the business retention and expansion, continue to meet with companies and hear from them. And then the second one is critical, is managing the programs, whether that's the city-based revolving loan fund or connections to deed or other resources that might be out there. The city-specific actions, continuing to focus on events that are drawing customers to town, supporting the facilities, including the sports facilities where some of those events are held, working to leverage the service clubs for events and for outreach and connection building, and then looking at signage and wayfinding. And so those 4 things are city priorities the EDA could support, but not necessarily lead. The second one here is new business development, which really contains any of the business attracting new companies to the area, support of entrepreneurs, and then this general role of sales and advocacy and communications on selling what the community has to offer. And so one key action there for the EDA is to maintain strong ties with the local economic development partners, including the Grand Forks Region EDC and the Chamber of Commerce. A specific process to look at, why companies may not choose Minnesota or choose East Grand Forks, and identify some strategies to maybe help fix some of those problems, or identify some of the things maybe we can't control and how to work around them, and also look at the things that maybe where Minnesota may have some advantages and leverage those where possible. And then the last one is to collaborate with DEED on economic development opportunities, and that's really referring to the specific projects that may come down the pipeline, typically from DEED or through the state. So say there is an expansion that's considering East Grand Forks. Someone has to lead or shepherd that process, working with the city, working with local landowners, working with infrastructure developers, land developers, that sort of thing. And so that would be a key role for the EDA. And then under this bucket for the city, it's really just to funnel economic requests to the EDA, growth requests. And the key there is to centralize and make sure that if the city is to have an EDA, it's really helpful that that person is in the middle of all of this discussion, and it makes things much more efficient. Connect, convene, communicate, that covers the marketing, that covers communications, quality of life efforts. And so the first suggestion there is to create a regular opportunity to keep engaging the business communities. That could be an advisory committee, it could be some other structure or a regular meeting or event to continue that conversation. Looking at strategies to incentivize businesses to improve aesthetics, and then as well as the aesthetics for entrances to the city. A lot of that came from that last session that we had, where there was a lot of talk about, how do we look at some of maybe the properties that are privately owned in the community that could be improved, or maybe reflecting poorly on the rest of the community, and find ways to incentivize those landowners or property owners to improve those. And then looking for outside resources for beautification. Under the city bucket there is looking at assessing marketing and communications across the city, and we talked a lot with Mr. Huttunen about that. There's multiple marketing efforts that happen, whether that's through Water and Light or the Park District or other events and those sorts of things, along with what the EDA is doing. And so the goal there would be to maximize the resources that the city is expending for marketing and communications. A supporting role there on activities that support quality of life. And then these other percolating key issues that affect the economy, the sales tax initiative, code enforcement, and adequate child care in the community. And then the last one is land and site development, which has obviously been a key area for the EDA in the past. That should continue, but the role should be focused maybe more on commercial compared to housing. And so the EDA should work generally to increase the land available for commercial and industrial development. And then should continue to sell the existing lots held by the city. And then the last piece there is the city role for land use and development, which is looking at a strategy for infrastructure assessment. To look at the city's actual process for creating development agreements and developments and make sure that that's as streamlined and efficient as possible. That's another thing we heard at a couple of the meetings. Infrastructure, number 4 there, assessing the access to utilities and services and improving that where possible. And then the last one is working on workforce housing and other incentives or programs to do that. That may or may not be single-family homes. And so that's really the gist of it. It's these cross-cutting priorities, but then trying to create this structure, these 4 pillars with the work underneath each, to inform the actions going forward.
So have we hit the nail on the head, or what are we missing? What is in here that shouldn't be in here? Are we to a point? What kinds of changes do you think that should be made in this document to make it more reflective of what we're seeking?
Look at what we need to do and how we need to do things. From there and go. You're always going to be able to tweak stuff as you go, so it's...
The flexibility, it's important.
Anybody else have any comments? See none, sir.
Do you want me to mention that new program right now, since I'm still up here? At the EDA meeting today, yesterday we received a press release from the Northwest Minnesota Foundation where businesses and nonprofits are invited to apply for a Promise Act grant funding. And that's grants. It's not a loan or anything you have to pay back. There are criteria. The program is being run with state dollars that are being run through the Northwest Minnesota Foundation out of Bemidji. And we will be putting this information online, but there are, like I said, there are criteria for businesses to qualify. And if you have any questions, we'll give you the contact information on how to get additional information from there. And I will, of course, assist to the greatest extent that I can with anybody who's interested in proceeding with this. And thank you for letting me do that.
Thank you, sir. No other questions on that. We'll move on to number 2.
I could just, one thing, I know we have the EDA board here, and I just want to say thanks to everyone who's here, and to the extent that we can have a kind of a seamless connection between the work that you all do and the work that we do. We're going to have the change in staff, and sometimes the board is the glue that carries an organization through those times, and we thank you for that, to help with that transition. We'll do everything we can also on our end. I think Reid's going to be very good as for departments, as dealing with a new department head. But I just want to say thank you for your service on the board, and especially during this time of transition, we're going to enjoy having you continue on through. Thanks.
Okay, with that, move on to number 2, discussion on Economic Development Director job description and process for position search. Mr. Huttunen.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President, council members, mayor. Thank you for the introduction. That's, I think, an important point to note is the volunteer time that the board members spend. So I would extend that thank you as well to each of you and for taking the time to be here tonight. In the February EDA meeting, President of the board, Mr. Grindy, suggested that the EDA should put together a smaller committee to review the EDA job description and set a focus to the top skills or attributes that we'd like to push for in recruiting a new EDA director. And so last week we were able to meet kind of as a subcommittee. It was Mr. Grindy, Justin Hecht, Councilmember Larson, Barry Wilford from the Chamber, and myself sat down and looked at the existing executive director position description and a format that matches the updated city formats, which is included in your packet tonight. Discuss top attributes that we'd like to see focused on, and Mr. Schill touched on those when he talked about the strategic plan as well. But top priorities that were kind of identified in our discussion is number one, the ability to build relationships with businesses and community partners, retaining business and helping business grow is the top priority. Really being that kind of chief spokesperson, face of the organization of the EDA, and being able to be, to a degree, that salesperson for our community when it comes to having face-to-face, whether that's existing businesses and making sure they have what they need to succeed, or in the effort to recruit new business opportunities to the community. Number two, the knowledge of EDA programs and available funding opportunities. We all know there's a lot of state funding available, there's federal funding, and having the ability to obtain and learn or experience in those funding opportunities already is a priority. The experience and ability to write grant applications or facilitate supporting writing grant applications. That's been identified as an EDA need. I think it's been identified as a city need as well, with all the different pockets of money available to help our services grow. And finally, the last one, promote and market city programs through the EDA's web pages and social media platforms. In making the recommended updates to the job description, I did send, after our meeting last week, I shared that job description with David Drown and Associates, our human resources consultant that grades and points all of the job descriptions. There's a couple kind of fundamental changes to the current or the proposed job description from the existing one that do affect the total scoring or grading of the position. Number one, under the essential functions, there are a couple functions that were in the previous job description that aren't directly under the purview of the economic development director anymore, those being the housing programs. Some of the housing programs and the operating of the Sunshine Terrace apartments, while fiscally they still fall under the EDA's management. Miss Ellis, in the community development director position, manages the day-to-day operations of that. So the job description's been updated to reflect removing those from this position. There's also been a downgrade in the requested qualifications and experience. The previous job description asked for the words considerable experience. The new updated job description asks for 2 to 3 years of experience in local government, economic development, urban development type of work. And just that simple change from considerable to 2 to 3 years played a part in the grade scoring. So DDA recommended, based on those factors, that we could advertise this position at a grade 20 versus a grade 22, which is what it currently is if we choose to do that, based on a few of those changes. So that's important to note. As far as, and we'll take any comments as we get through it, but just maybe a couple of points to touch on to try to guide the discussion tonight. Certainly open to any changes to that job description between yourselves as a council and the EDA board. The search process itself, I think it'd be prudent of us to discuss that tonight. When we last had this opening in 2014, we hired an executive search firm, Springset at the time, now Baker Tilly, to conduct that search. There were 19 applicants initially for the nationwide post, of which 10 made an initial round of cuts to be qualified for the position, and I think we ended up with 4 finalists to interview out of that search. My recommendation and the discussion from the committee when we met last week would be that we would post this position using local staff initially, and skip the national search and the potentially $20,000 bill that would come with a search of that nature. We would advertise it locally with our own staff on our local media sources, on the League of Minnesota Cities web pages, economic development associations all throughout the Midwest. We'd be able to manage and do all of that ourselves versus hiring a search firm. I would propose we would do that for 4 weeks, and then at that time assess what kind of applicant pool we have. Hopefully we've got a qualified one and we'd be able to move forward with interviews. If we didn't, we'd still be able to take the opportunity to consider hiring a search firm at that time. It would slow down our end date of when a new employee would start, but I think that would be a calculated decision for us to make. That would be my recommendation. And then talking about timeline and actual interview process. Mr. Galsted and I have had some conversation today. I think there's a little bit more work we need to define in how this EDA director position fits within the city and its civil service rules. My initial reaction would be that we would need to use civil service as an initial interview round to qualify and make sure that the applicants all fit the criteria that we're looking for before they get passed on for final interviews. But Mr. Galsted and I have a little bit more work to do to be able to confirm that that's the required step we would need to take. And then when we get to a final interview process, what format do we want to use for that? Do we, will the EDA board invite the city council to participate in that process, and maybe setting up 2 different interview panels is what we discussed at noon at the EDA board meeting today. So with that, I think any questions, comments from any of the EDA members? Anywhere there's an open chair and a mic, please feel free to join us.
I guess one of my questions right away is, when you guys went over this today, I guess maybe it's one of the board members can address it. Any changes or thing that you guys came up with that we can discuss at the same time, or? Mr. Larson?
Yeah, I could add. No, we reviewed the same presentation here at noon. General discussion was positive and that we're on the right track here. I had commented that the updated duties on the position description mesh with the strategic plan as well. And so these 2 documents really work together. And as we start to send out this potential job opening, I think it would be great to include that strategic plan as well to kind of show the breakdown of responsibilities and the refined vision for the overall department.
I appreciate it. Anybody have any initial questions or thoughts?
I'd say everything you've shared is spot on as far as bringing it in-house, as far as working it closely with our EDA board, and then maybe coming along in a bit of a parallel fashion with the council being involved. I like the fact that you went back through and took a close look at the job description and tied it in with the action plan, because we've all agreed in the past that a plan of action that has no action isn't any good. But the likelihood of it actually happening is way greater when the person coming in is privy to all of, okay, this is what we just came through. Are you willing to jump on board with this or not? So to tie it all together, I think, is a very good thing. It all sounds good to me.
Anybody else? Sorry. I think it looks really good. I think that you guys put a lot of work into it. I appreciate the EDA doing their committee. And putting this together and working with Reid, and hopefully we can get some good candidates. So, does anybody else have anything? Anybody from the EDA board? We can get Penny to say something. I've only been there a couple times, but.
Welcome.
So, all right, well, we'll move on then. So, appreciate it. Number 3, request to file assessment roll for 2023. Assessment job number 1 for street and pedestrian improvements. Mr. Emery.
Good evening, Mr. President, Council. Again, we're here to file the assessment roll for 2023 assessment job number 1. Again, this was the city's federal subcharter project from last year. It's kind of been standard as of late. We have typically been holding the final assessment hearing prior to awarding the project, but kind of the timing of the project, the fact that, again, we were only assessing 30% of the project costs. We did proceed last spring with awarding the project, without holding that final assessment hearing. So now that we got the project wrapped up, all the project costs known, finalized all with the contractor, put together basically all the final project costs and the associated assessment roll. So Again, when you look at kind of the total project costs, really consists of your construction costs, the cost for plan inspect, staking inspection, and administration costs. So again, come up with the total project cost, again, assessing 30% of that, and then just dividing that out between all the benefited properties, and again, assessing either front-end benefits, or front benefits, or an end benefits. So, and again, I provided a map of just the properties that would be getting assessed. So, really just kind of the next process is just kind of final assessment roll and then set a date for the final public hearing. So, just for that, I'll take any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Emery? I see none, sir. Appreciate it. Number 4, review of annual sewer cleaning quotes 2024. Mr. Stordahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. What you have before you today is just our regular annual sewer cleaning that we've been doing since 2011. This year it doesn't involve as much televising because we have all the main areas of town televised in the last 4 or 5 years. There will be a little bit of televising for some of the troubled areas, but we put on a request for a proposal to 4 different companies. We got 3 back. Johnson Jetline was the low, and I'm recommending that we go with Johnson Jetline for cleaning and televising services this year.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Stordahl? I see none, sir. Appreciate it. Number 5, announcement of change of spring cleanup dates. Mr. Stordahl.
So in the last probably half a dozen years, we've had to move our spring cleanup back a week. It's usually the first full week in May. And because of flooding, kind of late flooding, we don't have enough staff to do the work on the flood duties and do the spring cleanup. So Grand Forks decided that they were going to move theirs back a week, and we just went along with that as well. So that will be the 11th through this, or the 13th through the 17th this year, the second week in May, and the hazardous waste and electronic drop-off will stay the same at May 11th from 9 to 3 at the Public Works Building. We'll be putting out that communication since it's incorrect on our sanitation calendar. Megan will put something on the website. The Water and Light Department will put something in the billing as well as our newsletter, and then we'll be advertising it like normal in the paper and on the news. So just want to let everybody know.
Thank you, sir. Unless there's any questions for him on that. I see none, sir.
Thanks.
Number 6, review bids for City Hall roof replacement project. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Council President, council members, and I apologize in advance. I thought I had included the schematic report for the work to be done in the email that I sent out, but I did not. So we'll have that available to you. I'll send that out in an email, and it'll be available to you before the council meeting on Tuesday. As you recall, we had an inspection of all the roofs in the city. City Hall was one that was scheduled to be repaired in 2024. We have some federal dollars that we'll be using, so we went through the schematic report, looked to see what we needed to do. We have design plans. What we're proposing to do is to pull all the gravel off the top, re-rubber the 3 different wings, and then we're going to do, as an addendum, we were pulled that from separate to see what the costs were, replace all the metal flashing around each wing, and do the dome. So the dome was one that concerned us because we're not sure if the work needed to be done, and it's very specific, and it's really concerning. It takes a lot of delicate work. So we put that in as a deduct in case we felt we didn't want to do the dome itself, because we're not sure if it truly needs it. So we went out for bids, we received bids. I gave you the bid tabulation. One was noticeably a low bidder compared to the others, which concerned us, Equity Builders. Not that we weren't familiar with them, we did some digging, but we were curious as to why they were half of what the other bids came in as. And so we did meet with their estimators on Friday and went through Davis-Bacon wages, made sure that they had followed through the schematics. We asked them tons of questions about how they came up with their estimate, how they get the work done. Looked at other types of work that they had done, and they strictly work only in government buildings, and they will be doing the project over at Polk County in April and then coming here in May if they were to receive that contract to do the roofing. So that's why their bid came in a little bit under, because they already would be located up in the area. So based on the bid tabulation, you can see the base bid was $375,000 with the add alternate, and that includes the metal flashing around the wings, and it also includes gutter system. As you can see from the outside of the building, that the water is kind of running down the side of the brick and it's causing it to stain. So we'll be replacing that. Hopefully we'll get that cleaned, and then I'll add that gutter system so that we can maybe shed the water away from the building rather than running down the sides of it. And then recommended by our project manager is that we deduct the dome for now and not do that work. So based on that, references, look through Dun & Bradstreet to make sure that they were a responsible bidder, and they were. So the recommendation then was to go with Equity Builders. And so I'm just bringing it to you if you have any questions in regards to the bid. We estimated the project at $750,000, and we're coming in under that with this low bidder. So we were confident that we should go forward with that contract with Equity. So.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Ellis? I see none, ma'am.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, number 7, request to hire Parks and Rec specialist. Mr. King.
Thank you, Council President, City Council, and Mayor. The Park and Recs Department has received a resignation from our full-time Parks and Rec specialist. The position is very important to our department. It helps for us to be successful, providing administrative support, doing various office tasks, providing customer service, marketing and programming, helping plan events, promotions, distributing Parks and Recs information, and overseeing various recreation and culture activities. The position was listed as a grade 10, step 1. For the 2024 budget, it was budgeted as a grade 10, step 5. The job was originally created in 2019. It went from an admin to a park specialist. During that 2019, all the recreation fees were increased to cover the cost of that position. With the increased fees, the residents were expecting, better customer service, more communications, more reliable people at the office window, faster return of phone calls. So that's kind of why the position was put in place back in 2019. Looking at the workload facing the department here in the next year, we have the LaFave Park project starting this summer. We have facilities improvement initiative looking forward this fall. So the workload is going to be, I would say, above average for the department here coming up in the next year. The accounting tech position is sitting open. I'm sure some of the thoughts initially were, is there an opportunity here for the city to blend the two positions together, or maybe try to come up with a combination of how can we get both positions filled and use this to fill both and kind of take the workload off some other staff. Some of the internal conversations we've had, you're looking at two pretty opposite skill sets. With the accounting tech position, you're looking more of obviously accounting background, where the specialist position is more of a customer service-based background with some light accounting skills. So it didn't really seem like they was a fit to try to come up with a position to do both. If you were to approve it next Tuesday and we were to start the process for hiring, we could have this position hopefully filled before the pool was open at the beginning of June, which would be ideal for our department. I guess our recommendation would be to move forward with hiring the position.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. King? Mr. Vetter?
I'll jump in. We haven't even started budget process yet. Last year when we went through it, that's one of the reasons why we haven't filled the accounting position yet, is to help balance our budget. We had talked about lots of changes in the Park District last year through the budget process. Some of those are probably still in the planning stages and may come about yet. So I think this position needs to stay open, at least through the budgeting process. I think the EDA director position needs to stay open, at least through the budgeting process. Both positions may be a way to help balance the budget going forward. And I don't think we're in any hurry to fill either of the positions at this point, and would just put a hold on them until we get through the budget process again.
Anybody else have any comments? Mr. Mayor.
I think we should move on filling it. The budgeting process runs all the way to the end of the year, and that would just be too long. Did we fully budget for the accounting technician position for this year?
We budgeted for it beginning July 1st.
I think we should be in the hopper for that too. We should ramp up for a higher July 1st according to that budgeting. Again, what we're doing internally right now in our admin office is not sustainable. Reid, you of all people would know that, watching the workload of the people we have there. And because this is a known position, it's a budgeted position, I think it's a quality of life issue for our people that we run good programs. If we're going to run a program through our Park and Rec, we're going to run a quality program where the people get the level of service that they're accustomed to, and we've got to keep the quality at a high level. It's part of the quality of life that people enjoy here, and I would support hiring it sooner than later.
I would agree with the mayor. I think this is a position that we need to fill. I think that we also need to look at filling the EDA director's position. I think moving forward, this is like the mayor said, this is budgeted already for the year. As Reid indicated, in July 1st is for the accounting specialist technician. I think that we need to move forward with that also. I know that we go through the budget process. It does take us a while to go through everything. We start early, but we can have these discussions as we move on. But I think we need to fill it, especially what's coming up this year for the Park and Rec department. A lot of things going on. I think that person does a lot of stuff on social media, also posting, getting the word out, what's going on. So I think this is something that is needed. So, but anybody else have any thoughts? See none.
Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it. All right. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Larson. Second by Pearson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned.